Let's see if I can keep it brief with a little bit of commentary on our first episode of Chaotic Play. And the first item of business is to look at what I'm confronted with for preparation. Fascinatingly, for the game, which is absolutely predicated on being in a strange and unknown to you beforehand host body, there's no systematic determination of who or what you land in when the team goes through the transego device. So, looking through the book and looking at the adventures, then thinking a little bit about the philosophy of play that's implied in a few other places, it's clearly under a considerable amount of game master control. So the game master has provided the team with the circumstances of the mission, the Earth world circumstances, and in the listed adventures, it often involves a monster attack or operation of some kind. So the team is being reactive toward an immediate situation on Earth. That's one point, is that the game master has sort of the Earth side context for the mission. And then that, of course, means a directive of what they're sort of expected to accomplish. The skill point award system is based heavily on what was the mission and whether they accomplished it, to what extent. So it's a big deal that the mission be stated, but that's just coming straight out of the game master's mouth at this point. There's no player character input into this, although conceivably, if some of the player characters were part of the command structure of ICES and that operations base, then I suppose that could be involved. For early play, I don't see how. So with that in mind, a lot of this is determined. Just you're here and you jumped and this is what you land in and this is what you see. So the framing of it all is really front loaded. There's, I don't roll to see like which of the characters in some situation they land in, or say like what sector of the area. We know that the transego device, it's stated, for whatever reason, is landing people in the same vicinity, which happens to be the city that Isabella Bain has taken over and is ruling a portion of Xenos from. So they're always going to land in and around that city. But it's not like there's a little chart that says, okay, you land, oh, look, you land somewhere in the slave quarters, and now GM picks somebody that they could be part of. Or any way of determining, or even a rubric for saying, decide what's going on with these principles in mind. No, it's just settled. I mean, it's pretty much assumed that the game master has kind of a editorial strategy for what kinds of situations the player characters will, observe at the very least, upon arrival. So all that stated, I'm kind of looking at that, kind of wishing for a more deterministic method, so that I would be able to say, oh my God, they land in this guy's body, or, oh, they land in a bystander's body, or, something like that. So that's not there. With that stated, I also really put some effort into looking through the very elaborate, very personality heavy circumstances of both the ICES base in Dillon, Nebraska, and a bit more as well, in the wider net of ICES around the world. And then over on Xenos, it's really elaborate. You've got at least 20 NPCs, named and active NPCs over there. And I was kind of relieved. I was like, well, good, and I read up and down. I was like, okay, these are the dynamics. If we land anywhere in Xenos, and given that there has been one jump team mission that was compromised, I've got a pretty good idea. Some of the listed NPCs have very strong opinions about this, and there are lots of practices. I mean, if only there had been a way to tell me where in that urban landscape the jump team would land, it would be child's play to look in that area, think about the major personalities there, and think about the dynamics of what was going on, and then think about response to the jump team, whether these particular people cared or knew about it or not, all of that would be child's play. So effectively, what I did was look at it, and a couple of things caught my eye. The first is very, very tempting. The first, according to the canonical information, the first jump team had occupied the body of a cyborg named Ibu. And that cyborg did not survive the mission. And that cyborg's brother, whose name is Ibu Da, has mobilized a hunt for what they all on Xenos, except for Isabella, presumably, or any of her insiders, would consider to be some sort of demonic possession or some sort of ghost effect or some sorts of spirits that are, taking over bodies, invading and taking over bodies. And I presume that her troops, at least, are aware that, they get sent on these missions to this place called Earth to wreak havoc. And so the notion that this is some kind of counterattack is, if not known to the rank and file, there are upper-ups who probably have a fair understanding of this. On Xenos, we have these different groups. We have the progeny, who are humans who are altered by Isabella Bain with the psychotronic technology. And the ones who that technology doesn't, their body rejects it. They are called rejects. They are the lowest of the low. The progeny are the highest of the high. And then you have the altered, mutated animals of different kinds who are collectively called spawn, and the ones who serve, in the troops and who have become high priests and officers and stuff. There's a fake religion worshiping Isabella, for example. They are also, psychotronically modified. So they don't really get along with the progeny. The progeny still consider them animals and are very, dismissive. But they are the bulk of Isabella's loyal populace. So there's some interesting conflicts of interest there. There's more too. There are the human rebels. There are the various other different sorts of spawn. The cyborgs are a particular sort. Anyway, Ibu Da is one of these cyborgs who's pretty well regarded trooper type, and he has teamed up with one of the upper ups who's called the Huntmaster to start hunting down purported jump teams. So and he's got a little psychotronic device which can actually detect a jump team, but it's only passable. So his ability to use it is also passable. So that means he has to roll, or rather, he doesn't roll. The GM doesn't roll. I have to look and see passable versus passable. So he only gets minimum information. It said results above passable, which he can't achieve, will give you distance and specification. So he only knows they're around here somewhere for a given district of the city. That's all he knows. So he's basically just roaming around. And if he gets that signal, they could jump somewhere else and he wouldn't know. If he gets that signal, then he's like, they're around here somewhere. So he basically comes off as kind of deranged to anybody who doesn't know the scoop about, the jump teams. So that's kind of fun. And I also noted that Isabella has it somewhat, this has been going on for 85 years. She wants to always occupy a young woman's body. So she's actually breeding them in her palace in this place called the Breeding Pit, which is a horrific notion. Real dark ass 90s dystopian, cyber tech going on here. And I was looking around, I was thinking, well, what if there are women in the prison compounds or the slave compounds or stuff like that, or the human ghettos, they're called, scattered around the city, and women who could be eligible for this are probably kept in hiding. Well, I say, all right, let's have a progeny who's been hunting for these, working for Isabella in the Breeding Pit and his squad, make sure that they're all the appropriate genetic stock that would appeal to Isabella, gets found. They're well aware, that the human populace doesn't care for this practice. So that led me to make up this guy named Keach, and Ibuda is already given, but I made up Keach myself and made him, I made him a real asshole. I mean, this guy actually wants to subvert the breeding pits himself by being basically, parent to Isabella's bodies. And, he has a sadistic approach to it. And I'm just like disgusted by this person. I'm like, that's great. Awesome. Just who we need for a bad guy. So I just dropped the team right into a situation in one of his squad, not him, but one of his squad, who's actually dragging a woman off to, the breeding pit. And of course, Ibuda, has his little helmet has gone ding, 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 jump teams around here somewhere. And he is a little bit outside the hierarchy of all of this because he's got this special mission and he's not taking shit from any progeny. Fantastic. I've got my scenario. I've tried to work with as much that was deterministic or directly inspired from the material as I could. And I also knew that I had to work with the canonical history of the ICES activity so far. And one of those important points is the comic that's actually provided in the paper rulebook that I've got. The PDF that's available doesn't have it. And it is the experiences or some of the experiences of the initial jump team. And those characters are given in the book. It is very strongly implied. I mean, one hair short of explicitly stated that one way to play this game, and I presume this was the way it was often played, was actually to provide those initial jump team characters to the players and say, you're playing this guy, and go straight into the jump for mission number 1. And the events of such, either these were just plain made up and fictionalized or they came from a game, I don't know. But that includes the death of the host, Ibuda, and it also includes the betrayal of the team by Dr. Kasparian, who over-idealizes Isabella. They have returned, according to the book, without him. Somehow his mind was separated. There are some very edge case rules ways in which the members of the jump team can end up in different bodies, but it's not something you do too voluntarily. But I looked at it, and I also really like the rules for how awful it is to be trapped in a dead host and the difficulty of getting out. And I could see, through the rules, you could end up with a situation where somebody could get themselves out alone. So Kasparian gets out, doesn't help the rest of them that are stuck in there, and he goes off to join Isabella Bain, leaving the rest to, go slowly mad and die in this decomposing body. But they managed to get out anyway. So the 3 of them come back. One of them was the Russian Psy soldier. The book is interesting. It doesn't say anything about using your psychic powers on Earth, and indeed, nobody even knows about these psychic powers on Earth. But then the adventures seem to be set with greater knowledge of them and the notion that there are some psychically active people on Earth itself. I don't really like that, and it's only encapsulated within the adventures, and so I decided to kind of just not pay too much attention to that. But anyway, we have this very psychically gifted Russian soldier who had been, or lab rat, really, not a soldier, who had been sent on the first jump team. He didn't get along with any of them, and although he was among the ones who came back. So I said, all right, the Russian government's whisked him back. They loaned him. He came back damaged. He's precious to them. They took him back, leaving behind 2 very well characterized NPCs for that jump team.